Biological computers are no longer sci-fi. They're here, now. You can go to Cortical Labs' website and buy a computer loaded with 200,000 human neurons. These neurons can be programmed to learn skills, perform tasks, and have even successfully played Doom. This has 100% demonstrated that human brain neurons can interact with synthetic electronic stimulus and learn abstract and difficult tasks, just like the brain in your skull. And it is the brain in your skull in particular. The organ between your ears may become the most valuable asset you own. With the perverse incentives biological computing brings, the powers that be may want that mind for themselves. And soon, there will be no good reason to stop them. The Cortical Labs CL1 is at its core a layer of brain neurons, called an organoid, spread across an electronic array. The array can send and receive signals from the neurons, and the neurons, of course, can interact with each other. Let's use Pong as an example, one of the original tests. Now, when the neurons begin to play, their electrical output appears random. The neural culture has no structure, no innate ability to understand Pong. It doesn't know the goal, or what the paddle and the ball are, it just has voltage. So, it has to learn entirely from scratch. It does this with feedback. The brain cells receive data they don't know how to interpret, and it first responds at random. It moves the paddle up and down, not correlated to the ball. Then, when it inevitably misses, the neurons are given negative feedback. This is in the form of random, disparate shocks that stir up the culture and try to make it form new connections. After some time, when the neurons inadvertently guide the paddle to the ball, the organoid receives positive feedback, a shorter, softer, regular pulse of electricity that reinforces the neural pathways that led it to success. This is called a cybernetic loop, and it's the same way people learn to do anything. For more in-depth on this, you can watch my video, End-Stage Content Addiction. Now this thing is able to learn not just a game so simple as Pong, but Doom, on just 200,000 neurons. Your brain has 86 billion. There's so much further to go. And there are major advantages to biological computing compared to silicon. The brain in your skull stores an estimated 2.5 million gigabytes of data and operates on only 12 to 20 watts. A comparable silicon data center requires 125 24 terabyte hard drives and pulls 3.1 kilowatts of power. The brain is nearly 200 times more efficient, not even counting overhead and operation. Every current barrier, hardware, software, interface is currently being worked on. The government's involved. There's DARPA funding. Biological computing is part of the future, whether we like it or not. You might think the horror is simply the thing in itself, that humans are growing unnatural organoid creatures and then enslaving them with the occultic force of electricity. But frankly, that's just the beginning. Critically, this technology is a black box, like all machine learning. We know it works because its output is correct, but we don't know how it works, and certainly not what reasoning it uses. This is the same as LLMs like ChatGPT or Claude. Whether it's hundreds of thousands of weights on a model or hundreds of thousands of neurons on a chip, there's no possibility for a person to understand what is happening within the black box. With an LLM, its intelligence is easy to discount. ChatGPT doesn't think. It's math, binary signals on silicon. There's no sentience magic happening. But when it's biological material, the same biological material you exist within, how can we know that there isn't consciousness happening? The games rely on visual data, so for the neurons to be able to play them, it has to interpret that information in some way. So, are the neurons seeing? Our minds interpret electric signals from our eyes. What's happening with the neurons isn't particularly different. We all want to say the neurons on the chip aren't actually seeing and that there's no experience either. It's too scary to think otherwise. And with a fraction of the neurons, it's obviously different from a person. But it already has more neurons than bacteria, worms, and jellyfish, and the technology will only improve. What actually is it that makes it different from us? It's the same material, the same process, the same output. There's no physical line you can draw. So the difference has to lie with something immaterial, something called a soul. The idea of the soul has been relegated to theologians and mystics for about 100 years now, but there's no denying there is some ineffable quality that makes a person conscious and an LLM not. People already believe LLMs are conscious just because they can produce text outputs clever enough to seem like it. A large subsection of humans have failed the inverse Turing test. They believe the machine is a person even though they know it is a machine. Now compare that to a brain-powered machine. LLM training and the neural connection learning are very similar processes. Running an LLM or equivalent on a neural computer is a clear next step. And it's still a black box, just like an LLM, but there can be no hand-waving the intelligence away when it's running on wetware. If human neurons can generate speech that is indistinguishable from a person, what is the actual difference? The only possible concept we have to distinguish it is the soul. At what point do biological chemical reactions cease to be a science experiment but transform into experience? At a certain level of neurons? How would we even be able to tell? These questions can only be answered by determining what a soul is, and what organisms have one and which don't. This isn't hypothetical either. As soon as it is physically possible, some San Franciscan transhumanist is going to stuff his brain into a computer. For the sake of argument, let's say it works perfectly. The machine brain organism that was once a man produces realistic text output from sensory inputs that can read it aloud with a perfect simulation of its voice, emotion, and all. All the individual pieces of this are completely possible. So, is it still him? Most of us would say no. But even if we don't grant him the full category of human, could he still be sentient? Just something different? Could this cyborg being exist on a biological continuum between human, animal intelligence, and machine, but still be conscious? Could this biological machine have a new kind of soul? All of this seems like a problem for philosophers, theorists, or ethicists, but in reality, they don't get to decide. We don't get to decide either. A power far greater than us will create a working definition of the soul without any human purview. The market will determine what is acceptable. The distributed intelligence of humanity, machine, and algorithm will find an equilibrium point of collaboration. In most cases, this is fine. It's how history works. But when these incentives align to strip people of their body itself, it quickly becomes horrifying. We already have biological markets. We already have doctor malfeasance, doctors sacrificing organ donors to save more patients. Stressed out physicians are doing the trolley problem daily, and if you're pretending otherwise, you're not safe in a hospital. And that's without the direct monetary incentive that's always lurking. You legally can't sell your organs, but there are cadaver brokers who steal body parts and sell them. There is an international organ black market which does $840 million to $1.7 billion of business annually. The same market pressures now apply to your brain matter. Right now, you can buy 300,000 lab-grown neurons for $1,165. Call that $388 per 1,000 neurons. Compare that to the human brain. A study estimates that it costs $300,000 to raise a child to 18, but an adult has 86 billion neurons. That comes down to 1/3 of a cent per 1,000. A free-range human gives you 1,000x savings. But that's not the only advantage. A human brain grown naturally comes preloaded with language skills, motor skills, spatial reasoning, and all sorts of other abilities that would be costly or impossible to train from random plastic neural cultures. Simply being able to talk, walk, or write are complex skills that come with the product. Your mind will rapidly become an in-demand commodity. Like the GPU shortage, like the RAM shortage, the biological material between your ears will become an incredibly valuable asset. Possibly more valuable than all of the work an average person could do in their lifetime. Without a clean definition of the soul and what that means, perhaps they could sell you an AI simulacrum to take over your body. The LLM, trained on your Palantir databank of voice recordings, social media posts, work history, knows you even better than you know yourself. With neural interfacing technology and all that training data, the model will now know exactly how you think. It'll also be a perfect worker, providing for your family even better than you could. All you need to do is sell your biological brain. Just get it swapped out for a synthetic one. Frankly, what is the difference? The model is just as much you as you ever were. As for your brain, well, what does it matter to you? It'll go sit in a long hall of other brain computers and be restructured to whatever task is required of it. It'll be electrocuted with negative feedback until all of the neural pathways that could have possibly constituted you have been entirely reprogrammed. If there even was a you in the brain to begin with. And hey, maybe your brain is set to work using the specialized skills you've learned over a lifetime. There's no proof that you're in there. It's just circuitry. Electrical pulses swimming through organized lanes that allow the computers to work like you, talk like you, think like you. It's just an afterimage of the previous host. There's no ghost in this machine, biological or not. Without a common conception of the soul, or a shared understanding of what consciousness actually is, what is the functional difference between a synthetic mind, biomass, and an actual person? Only one thing's for certain. Synthetically growing a mind's worth of neurons requires trained professionals, precision equipment, laboratory space, stem cells, and expertise. Until all of that becomes cheaper than scooping a brain from a skull, they're coming for your head.